Bro, thank you for making the time and the effort to come down here.
Yeah, dude.
I'm this podcast excites me for two reasons because I think most importantly, a lot of my listeners love the idea of business and self-improvement. But then also I have another subset of listeners that like the idea of that sort of more woo-woo side of things, the energy and the flow and the way that we can manifest things into our lives. And I feel like you're the amalgamation of both of them based off your history and based off our time to be able to converse, even though briefly before today's conversation. So thanks for making a little trip out here. For people that don't know who you are or what you do or where you've come from, in a really, short synopsis, can you give us an idea about what it is that you currently do and where it is that you've come from?
Yeah, man. So my background is in entrepreneurship and marketing. So I've had a handful of different businesses, 2 that grew and sold, which kind of was a big deal for me. And then there's one that I still advise, and there's a new one that I've just recently started. So I've got a background in business and entrepreneurship, mainly with marketing as my core skill set. And then when I sold my businesses a little over 3 years ago, I went on this massive spiritual journey. And it had already started a little bit before then, but then the last 3 years has been this epic spiritual journey, discovering all about the secrets of the universe, frequencies, energies, healing, all this kind of stuff. And now I'm at a point where I'm kind of integrating both of those things. So now I'm kind of doing business in that realm. And I see myself as a teacher about some of this spiritual wisdom stuff and emotional healing and that kind of stuff. And essentially, to kind of boil it down though, I love to write, speak, and sing. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice, right? Speak and sing.
Yeah.
I wonder where this all comes from and stems from. I know, based off a little bit of your history, that you had a pretty interesting event at the Tony Robbins event when you were 19 that sort of changed the trajectory. And I'd love to get into that. But prior to that event, what were you like growing up, and what was it that led you to going to this Tony Robbins event in the first place?
Yeah, so for a little bit of context, so I grew up in a Catholic family, 2 brothers, one older, one younger, went through primary school, high school, went to a private school. My family's kind of relatively well off, so I was in a somewhat fancy private school. And I didn't really have this full clarity on what I wanted to do with my life. But as a middle child, my older brother was kind of the one that did a lot of things by the book. He was well behaved, really talented, sport, art, everything. And he got a job at an accounting firm, KPMG, as a undergraduate accountant, auditor kind of dude. And when I finished high school, I was I don't know what I want to do with my life. And there's a whole probably story behind that. But essentially, I was in that position. I don't know what I want to do with my life. And then when it came to deciding what am I going to do after high school, I pretty much just followed my brother's footsteps. I just did exactly what he did. Same uni degree, same uni, same job, same company. So I applied for the same job, the same company, and that's what I did. And then about 6 months in, I went for lunch with one of my colleagues who I actually went to high school with, and we were kind of the 2 people from our high school that had this job at this place. And there was 10 of us in our kind of cohort, but we knew each other, and everyone else didn't know each other, but we did. So we'd go out for lunch, and he started this eBay business where we'd be having lunch and his phone would be on the table, and every 10 minutes it would go cha-ching, and he was kind of low key, he'd just turn, he'd grab his phone and kind of look at it and put it down. And it was so mysterious and stuff. And then I was dude, what is going on here? And then he told me he had this eBay business and stuff. And I was just that was the moment where I was that sounds cool. I've just kind of been going through my life, following my brother's footsteps, not really thinking about what I want to do with my life. But that moment when it was cha-ching, cha-ching, and he's I've got this eBay business and I'm selling velvet coat hangers on eBay. It was the first moment in my life that I had a self-aware thought kind of thing, of what I would like to do with my life. I was I want to do that. Tell me about it. Then the summary is I started an eBay business, and then naturally getting into the realm of marketing, business, like self-development's kind of like on a similar frequency, let's say, similar wavelength to all that. Like usually if someone wants to get into it, especially if it's a more entrepreneurial thing rather than like family business or whatever, often the whole self-improvement thing kind of comes with it, right? It certainly did for me. Then my mum kind of told me about this Tony Robbins guy, and she used to listen to his programs like, way back. And then I just started listening to Tony Robbins when I was driving to work every day. And then he had an event coming up in Sydney, and I was just like, I gotta go. And then I found myself at a Tony Robbins event. So that kind of explains how I got there. And then at the event, it's a whole thing. It's like a kind of rock concert meets kind of like personal development or something like that. And I was just like, this is epic. Like I'm all about this energy, this passion. Let's go have dreams in our life and go after them. And one of the exercises is you got to make 3 decisions about like in the event, like you got to make 3 decisions, and then you got to go off back to your life and execute them. And one of the decisions I made was I'm going to quit my job at this accounting firm and I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you do hear about people that like do this whole thing of like quit their job and go do it and just lean into it. At that age, you're 19, right? So you're still at home?
Yeah, still living at home.
So you have the capacity and the ability to maybe have that luxury. Did you meet anyone that was older, let's say in their late 20s, early 30s, maybe got a kid or two that also did the same thing? And, being in business now for like the last, however, 10, 12 years, how do you go about looking back at that and go, was that the right thing to do if I was my age now? Like, how do you see that decision-making process?
I feel like there's a few things to balance. There's the sense of safety and security of like, can I pay my rent? Can I pay my bills? Can I eat food and just get by and laugh, right? That's a very valid aspect to be aware of, that we need to balance. And then there's, what am I passionate about? What I want to do? Like what will make my life fulfilling and exciting? That's another thing to balance. So I see it as like, there's 2 things to balance. And I think that it would probably be kind of one-sided to just be like, I'm going all in on the business without having any kind of baseline of security covered. And I think it would also be one-sided to be just focused on sense of security without considering like what your passions are and stuff. So I feel like, people have different opinions on this, but I just see both sides there are valid, and they both, I believe, if we consider both, then it's kind of like having a conversation with 2 people and they got different opinions, and you're being a mediator, and it's like, well, can we come up with some kind of middle ground where you're both happy? Because that's what I believe is inside of us, there are these different parts of us, right? People will often say, there's a part of me that feels like I really want to make my dreams come true, but there's another part of me that's scared and I need to have a consistent income or whatever. And they are 2 parts. And it's like we have these split personalities inside, but that's not a bad thing. It's just true. We have different parts. So I think that, but I think that finding the balance. So, let's say what that might look like would be, okay, well, how can you minimize your living expenses? Can you move back in with your parents if that's the kind of an opportunity that you have? Can you rent a, 3-bedroom home with some buddies and have the rent as low as possible? Can we have the expenses really minimized so that it's just like a very small baseline to cover? And then it's like, can you work part-time in a job to just cover that base and then spend the rest of your time going after your dream and making your business, happen? And then it's like, that's a starting point, I would say, for most people. And then as the business starts to get some momentum and then you're getting income there, you can just transition. And I think people make a big deal out of it like it's one way or another. And if I'm not going after my dream full on, then I'm like not committed to it or whatever. But it's like, if you're going after it and you run out of money and you can't pay for food and rent, then you're not committed to it. So I kind of see it as like, let's remove the shame around it and let's just be like, there's two parts of me. They both have valid perspectives. And then if you want to be really abundant and safe and successful and financially well off, then most likely over time that'll come either from investing or business success, because, you know, even if you're in a high paid job, there's always a limit, whereas investments can compound and grow and business success has no limit. So it's kind of like at some point the transition will make sense, and then you'll go deep on the business journey if that's what you choose. But starting off where you are, like, let's not be in denial, right? Like, we got to accept where we're at and move from there.
I think when I reflect on what you've said, one of the things that's apparent for me is, like, even with this podcast and my other endeavors, like, I've tried not to put a specific time horizon on having to achieve them. You know, people, and this is where it's interesting, because you have some thoughts and philosophies around goal setting and 3 month, 6 month, 12-month goal setting. But then you have other things and ideas around, well, we go, okay, what are those goals meant to mean to me? Is it meant to be a financial goal? Is it meant to be just a KPI, just the right step in the right direction? But I've been able to, I know with this podcast, been able to do it whilst running my podiatry practice. And I think not putting a specific time horizon goal in place has allowed me to go and do this as long as I'm consistent, not feeling any burden or shame about not going 100%. Because there is a lot of that. It's like you hear this culture of, like, you know, you can't have a plan B. You don't have a plan A. You can do that. But it means that you might lead from, and when we speak about energy probably a little bit later, you probably lead from a very desperate energy, which is interesting as well. Going back to deciding to leave KPMG, how quickly did you go, sit in the office and say, I quit?
So it was actually about 2 months from the event that I did that. But it's because I had a plan, which, looking back, it makes sense, but I can also see how current moment me would probably do it a little bit differently. But essentially I was 9 months in to my time there when I went to the Tony Robbins event and I decided I'm going to quit. But I was 19 and I was living at home and I was still very much under a very strong influence of my parents. I hadn't fully formed my own sense of self and confidence and all of that yet. So I told them, I was like, hey, I was like, I'm going to quit my job. But I was still very much in that, like, I'm not an adult that makes decisions yet. I was more in that energy of, like, this is what I want to do, but you're my parents and you're the ones that kind of tell me what's right or whatever. And I'm kind of submissive to that. That was the energy and the dynamic I was in. But they're, you know, they have good intentions. They want me to be happy, everything like that. And they're very supportive, you know, to the greatest extent that they know how to anyway. And my dad's kind of advice, and my dad's actually a business person. So he's had his own business for like 30 plus years. So it's not like having a business was like unique in the family or whatever, or unknown and scary and whatever. So his advice was, why don't you keep doing the eBay stuff on the side for a little bit longer and then give you a 4 weeks notice when you're at the 11-month mark, so that you then have a whole year there, so that if anything doesn't work out or whatever and you choose that you want to get another job somewhere, your like CV or your resume kind of looks good. It's like you spent a year at KPMG. Whereas if it's like 10 months, it's like, what happened? You know, did you get fired or something like that? So that was his advice, because he was trying to balance, I guess, you know, the potential outcomes of how things would go. And then, so yeah, I kind of got through that couple months and then I put in my notice, and then yeah, after a year I was done, and then I was full-time on the whole eBay thing, and that had its ups and downs. And then I kind of got into all kinds of other business things over the last 12 years or however long it's been.
Did you partner with your mate that was doing the eBay business, or did you decide to leverage off his knowledge and do it yourself?
I did it myself, but he was kind of like a mentor, let's say. Like, he kind of gave me some tips about the foundations of how it all works. And then because I was passionate about it, then I was just like really eager to kind of get in it. But like the basics, so he was like, you know, this is where I order my products from. Like, he told me about Alibaba and AliExpress, like these different websites where you can find products from overseas and then you can order them here to Australia. And then he kind of showed me how eBay works. It's like, yeah, you just like create a listing on eBay and then you just go to the post office and you send it. Like, but I didn't know any of that. So he gave me those kind of baseline kind of foundations. And then I was spending like 5 hours a day, like searching on Alibaba and AliExpress for different products and looking on eBay to see which products are selling well. And then I just kind of like got into it and just kind of figured it out, you know.
Was there any roadblocks that came in your way when you first started? Because obviously you have a friend that gives you a hand, but there comes a point in time where, you know, you hit certain roadblocks in certain businesses that allow you to challenge, you know.
Yeah, big time.
What were some of the things that you encountered? Because, you know, back then, like what was this, like 10 plus years ago?
Yeah.
Very different landscape to now.
Yeah.
Right? So for someone that is maybe going through, and a lot of people go through either online sales of some sorts, what were some of the roadblocks that you encountered that some of these people that might be listening also encounter? And then how would you navigate through that?
Well, the first one, which it feels so distant now, but still there's a bit of remnants of it that I can feel inside of me, is that I was embarrassed for anyone to even know I was doing this. I was hiding this from everyone, including my parents. I'm living at home and Australia Post is like dropping off my orders from China in these boxes with like whatever cufflinks or wallets or whatever I was selling at the time in them. These boxes with, you know, like 100 wallets or 100 sets of cufflinks or whatever. And I was like when the doorbell rang, I'd be like, I'll get it. And I'd go there. And if it was for me, I'd like sign it. I'd put it in my closet. Like I was hiding the fact that I was running this business, which like I look back and it's like, that's so interesting that that's where my level of kind of like confidence in my ability to just be myself in the world was at, you know, because, and then I would like get up early and I would like pack the things in my envelopes and I'd walk to like the post box, because I was sending things mainly in envelopes, and I'd walk like 5 minutes around the corner to the post box and do it. And I reckon I probably did something like 50 or 100 sales of my little products before my parents even knew about it. And I was living in their home, right? So I felt embarrassed and scared. And I think that's probably one of the first things that'll come up for a lot of people if they want to start a podcast, start a business, you know, pursue some new creative, artistic expression or something, you know, get singing lessons or whatever it is, right? I think especially in Australian culture, like, you know, I've spent a lot of time overseas, and I think Australia more than a lot of other places is there's this kind of like, you know, tall poppy syndrome. I don't want to stand out. What will my mates think that I've been to high school with or uni or whatever? What will they think if I'm all of a sudden trying to be different? That certainly came up for me. That was a big one. And how I navigated, I think I just time played out, and it's like my parents found out and I just had to kind of face any of those fears of what people would think. And, you know, if I think more about it, I could probably come up with some strategies about how to face that. But I think ultimately just kind of like going after it and just like embracing what comes up is just something that we sometimes have to do. And then other than that, like a big thing was just the instability of having a business compared to a consistent paycheck. Like I remember, so it was the middle of the year that I ended at KPMG, and I was doing maybe like a few hundred up to $1,000 a month in sales at first. But then I remember that Christmas, it's like 6 months after leaving, I had this massive month where I did $18,000 in sales Australian, but it was about 6,000 or 7,000 Australian in profit. But that was more than I was making then, you know, at KPMG. It was like, but then January, it went from 18,000 to 1,500. So it went down like, you know, 90% in 1 month. So I was like, I'm the king of the world. Like here I am with this big business. I'm this 19, 20-year-old successful entrepreneur. And then the next month it's like, I made essentially like $500 profit or whatever. So, and that was because, you know, there's Christmas sales, and then one of my products was really hot at Christmas, but then everyone was ripping it off by January, and, you know, the Christmas hype was over and everything. So, but like that's something that I had to deal with, was the instability. And so yeah, like there's these different things that come up, and I think that I've just kind of found a way to kind of manage them as I go. But this is where I think that kind of like balancing things is important, because if someone wants to get into business and they have such a high need for like security, then that they might need to just like resource some of that energy from, you know, a job, for example, until their business has a track record of consistency. Because if someone goes in and then 6 months in, they have this big month, and then the 7th month is like this massive decline, they could freak out. You know what I mean?
Totally. And so then how was the leap from doing an eBay business to starting your own business, as in your own online learning business? How did that all come about, and what made you take that leap?
Yeah. So I was selling all these different products on eBay, and then like I grew up playing golf, and golf's my favorite sport. So there's this product in golf called a rangefinder, and it's like binoculars, and it shows like there's a little digital thing inside the binocular that will tell you how far away the thing you're pointing at is. So you'll point at the golf flag, which is where the golf hole is, and it'll say, you know, you're 150 meters away or whatever. So these things were like $500 with like the number one branded one that everyone has. But there wasn't really many just kind of alternative versions that weren't like the Nike equivalent or whatever, you know what I mean? And I just looked at these different websites that have the Chinese suppliers, and I saw I could get like a product that essentially does the same thing, but it doesn't have like the logo on it. That's like, you know, Bushnell is the brand in golf, but it's kind of like, imagine you could get the same Nike top without the Nike tick, right? And it's like, you know, 10th of the cost or 7th of the cost or whatever. So anyway, these were going for $500, but I'm pretty sure they were like 70 to $100, something like that, from China. So I just got a couple samples, and then I would play golf and I'd use it, and it was like, this is the same thing. It just doesn't have the logo or whatever. And then I was like, I'm going to sell this. So I started selling that on eBay, but then I wanted to, mainly because of that kind of Christmas spike and then the January dip, I was like, I don't want to be at the mercy of eBay and just like, sometimes the sales are high, sometimes they're low. So I was like, I need to like have my own website. I need to learn about advertising. I need to kind of like have more control over what's going on here. So I took my product and I got my own little logo put on it that the people in China put on it. It was called Pin Sensor. I bought pinsensor.com. And you know, the little eye in Pin Sensor was like a golf flag, you know, and I thought I was so cool with my little logo, which now I look back and I'm like, I did not have a good designer, but at the time I thought I was cool. And then I had this website, and then I started to learn about Facebook advertising, did some like, you know, searching on YouTube and online courses, and on Facebook started getting in these different Facebook groups with all these marketers, and everyone's just in there talking about marketing and giving advice and whatever, people asking questions. And so then I started, selling my Pin Sensor things on my website with advertising. And then sometimes I would, you know, most of my sales were from Australia, but then I would randomly get sales from like South Korea and like, you know, the US, and I was like, how are people even like, I'm running ads in Australia. Like, how is this even happening? And I still to this day don't even know, because as someone with business experience, like my perspective is that if you put a website up, people don't just go there. Like they have to come from somewhere. So to this day, I still don't even know how these people in these different countries were like buying my product, but whatever, maybe that was the magic of the universe or something, right? And, but then cause I was learning about all of this, I was in these Facebook groups, and then people would be asking questions, and I would just be in there being like, yeah, so one of the things I learned was when I do this with my Facebook ads, like they get better results or whatever. I just kind of giving little tips here and there when people would ask questions. And then people would just message me directly and be like, thank you so much for answering my question. Do you do consulting or whatever? And then I just got into marketing consulting. And then that opened up opportunities because I had clients, and then they would want me to be more involved. And then they were entrepreneurs and they had business ideas and whatever. And I got involved in a few different businesses as a partner, and then kind of did that for a few years, and now I'm kind of more doing my own thing. But yeah, that's pretty much what's up.
Nice. And so I guess I'd love to pick your brain about marketing in some way, shape or form, because I know you did a little bit of NLP stuff. I know you've obviously done a lot of the Facebook marketing side of things. In today's sort of, I guess, landscape of marketing, especially for online products, is there a framework? Is there something that people should definitely know if they've got a product to market already that they should be really following to get maximizing their sales out there? Because there's a lot of people that are trying to run a business on the side, even if it's a product. So is there a framework? Are there tangible things like groups or I guess concepts that people should know about based off your experience?
Yeah, big time. Like the main thing people focus on, which I would say generally is not where you want to focus, is they focus on tactics. You know, this new Facebook ad trick, this new Instagram trick to get more followers, whatever. I wouldn't recommend that that's where your focus goes. There's like fundamentals. It's kind of like when it comes to health and fitness. It's like diet, exercise, sleep, and then there's maybe a few other things, minimizing stress, getting sunlight. But then there's all the bells and whistles, cold plunges and, you know, infrared, whatever, goggles and all this kind of stuff, right? Now, those things can have a big impact, and I do some of those things, but there are the fundamentals. And if you don't have the fundamentals and you're doing all the bells and whistles, then you're not really going to get anywhere. Similar with business, if you focus on all these tricks and stuff, you might get a little bit of results, but there's fundamentals. And I would say that when it comes to marketing, like one of the fundamentals is what marketers call the unique mechanism, which is your product needs, let's say it could be an info product, like an online course or coaching or something like that, where it's like expertise and knowledge and wisdom, or it could be a physical product, like some kind of, you know, like a microphone or whatever, right? So it's kind of different depending on if it's physical or digital. But let's say it's digital. Like most of my experience is in online courses in these various different industries. And when it comes to information marketing, or even think about it like as, let's say, a book, right? Which is like a very commonly known thing, right? Is people have books that they sell that share all their expertise. But then there's online courses, there's coaching, there's other things you can do. But if you look at all the books that are successful and bestsellers and everything, there's some kind of unique method, framework, system, blueprint that makes it different, where it's like a set of philosophies. There's a step-by-step system, blueprint, and you hear these words when you see marketing. It's like, you know, my step-by-step Facebook ad system or whatever. And it's because people feel a sense of hope that maybe this will work for me because it's a system. If it's just, hey, I got a Facebook ads course, like, so what? But it's like, here's my step-by-step Facebook ads course for, you know, authors or whatever. If someone's an author and they want to sell more of their book, it's like, oh, this guy's got a system. So when it comes to information marketing, you want to actually have a genuine system. Like, let's say something like bodybuilding or something like that. If someone has like been successful in building their body and their fitness, and they have an actual system of like, here's the exercises I do, here's how many reps, here's the days to train, here's what I eat, like that's a system. Whereas if just some random guy's just got like, yeah, I'll just help you with your training, it's not as enticing, right? So that's the main thing on info. It's, you want to have a unique mechanism, which is a system, blueprint, framework, methodology, process, you know, all these other words, but they're essentially the same thing, right? Some unique way of getting a result that consistently works. When it comes to a physical product, similar thing. You want to have a unique mechanism, but it's not necessarily a process, framework, blueprint, whatever. It's like a certain technology. You know, this product has some AI, whatever thing in it, and then it's like, oh, that's interesting. Or let's say these microphones. It's like these microphones have whatever technology in it that allow it to like, you know, capture the audio in the most effective way, even if it's, you know, you got 40 centimeters away from the mic or whatever. whereas other mics might not be able to do that same thing. But let's say it's even something like like my partner has a chocolate business, and it's like, for example, rather than using normal sugar, she'll use maple sugar, right? So it's like, that makes it unique. So that's one thing. But then another thing that I'll add on top of all of this is what I call like the power of definition. So, and this is getting more into like the woo-woo spiritual stuff, but if you say something like, if you, through your copywriting, which is essentially the words you use to kind of talk about your product, if you use words that create a certain definition around the thing, where it's like, this is the podcast mic, or this is the mic for podcasters, it's a mic. But if you say it's a mic for podcasters, then all of a sudden the podcasters are like, oh, this is the best podcast mic because it's for podcasters, right? Or if it's like chocolate. So for example, with my partner and her business, it's like chocolate that helps you make your dreams come true. And then, because the whole brand is around, when I make this chocolate, I put this intention into it that, the people that eat it have their hearts open, and then they can better understand what their passions are so that they can then follow their dreams. So it's like she's putting energy into it, like intention, and then all of the branding, the website, all the social media stuff, it's like, this chocolate is for people that want to open their heart and follow their dreams. And it's like, then the person that resonates with that, which not everyone will, but those that resonate with it will be like, I want this chocolate because it's going to help my dreams come true. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
So there's a few things you can do, but it really comes down to, even though I'm a marketer and I know all the different bells and whistles and I do them, and I've got more experience as a marketer than a product person, I actually feel like when you can bring that marketing energy to the product and then you do all the other marketing things, that's where the magic is. Because at the end of the day, if you can market something but it doesn't have a lot of value in it, then you're not going to grow your business. People are going to talk crap about your product, and then you're going to have negative word of mouth, and then eventually everything will burn to zero. So yeah, I think putting energy into creating an awesome product, understanding how it's unique, how it uniquely helps people in their life, and then throwing all the marketing bells and whistles on top, and you're good.
How did you do that with your pin sensor business?
Yeah, so we've got this unique pin sensor technology. Right. I don't even know what I was essentially. Look, to be honest, at the start, I didn't have the level of integrity and stuff that I have now. But essentially, I would say things like, with our unique pin sensor technology, blah blah blah. Complete the sentence. We have, or it's like, so for example, one of the things at the time is you would have to hold the thing and scan the binocular, and the reading would just kind of change like in real time. But there was this feature that it had where it could just like lock onto something. So it would kind of identify like, that's the flag, and it would lock onto it. So it'd be like, with our unique pin sensor technology, our pin sensor makes it, much easier to, find your target and whatever, so that you don't have to worry about, trying to have your hands so still or whatever. Like things like that. Yeah. And it's like, but here's the thing though, all of the products had pin sensor technology. They all had that lock thing at that time. But saying it, so this is another thing, like, because all of these things I'm talking about, unique mechanism, for example, there's like a whole funnel of like a whole world underneath that. Just like, podcasting is a whole thing, microphones, it's a whole thing. Like there's all these details to understand. With unique mechanisms, one of the ways you can present a unique mechanism is to talk about what's obvious that no one else is talking about. So all the competitors have this technology that locks on, but no one's saying anything about it. So at the time I was like, with our unique pin sensor technology, and it's like, that's not even a thing. It's just something that I've named to make it sound interesting. So that's one way you can do it, is you can say, and there's I can't remember right now, but there's certain there's like a famous marketing campaign. I can't remember it exactly right now, but essentially all they did was point out what no one else was pointing out, and all the competitors had the same feature, the same technology, the same whatever, but no one said anything about it. you know? So sometimes just saying the thing that's unique about it that helps, and what it always boils down to is you want to give the prospect that's looking at your marketing a sense of hope that because you've got something unique, now it'll work. So go back to the fitness thing. So many people try to lose weight, try to get fit. They try Atkins diet and this and that, or all these different diets, you know, keto and whatever. These are all just unique mechanisms. And as a marketer, I see the world through the lens of marketing. So I can see keto, Atkins diet, you know, 80-10-10, whatever. It's all just like marketers trying to make some unique thing that people can be like, oh, the Atkins didn't work for me because it's got too much carbs in it or whatever. But keto, that'll work for me because it's less carbs or whatever it is, right? Or it's like, you know, the vegan thing will work because alkaline acidic thing or whatever, like, you know, meat's all acidic and vegan, I'm going to have, you know, better pH in my blood or whatever. It's all like, honestly, marketers just rule the world with all of this influence. And that's kind of partially why I kind of got into all the spiritual stuff, because I kind of, whilst I enjoy and find it interesting, all this marketing stuff, I feel that I want to bring more love and like positive energy into all this stuff, because like if you learn how to influence someone at a certain point, well, my experience has been anyway, that I want to influence people. I want to use my skills and influence to influence people in a positive way. Like, sure, it's great to influence someone to buy a golf rangefinder or to buy some education about how to ride a horse or whatever. But it's like, really, I want to influence people to live in a way where they feel like their heart's open and they're living on purpose and enjoying their life. So to do that, I've had to go on this quest to learn about all this kind of other stuff, which now I feel like I'm trying to combine with the marketing and all that.
Let's lean into that, because that's cool. Because I think, you know, you see a lot of people that maybe flip it, so they're really into being able to give people the right intention and energy and leading them into a certain direction, but they've got no capacity to be able to scale their philosophies. You're sort of, by the sounds of it, gone in the other way. You've learnt the art of marketing and influence, and now you go, right, with my capacity and knowledge and brain power that I've got, I can lead with both my head and my heart to be able to create something great for people that I feel good about and they'll feel good about, and the end product should be good as well. So when you've gone into this field now, what were some of the things that you had to challenge and to deal with from an ethical perspective? Was there anything that come up for you at all where you're like, oh, if I sell it for this cost, maybe it's not the right amount of money, or, you know, maybe it shouldn't be going to this person because they're not ready yet, I should market to them. Did you have to encounter any of those things within your current business now?
So the main thing that I feel like that kind of set me off on this like spiritual quest is that I got really good at marketing, but just to give the listeners like some context, I was selling cufflinks and wallets and all kinds of weird stuff on eBay. Then I'm selling golf binoculars. Then I'm selling marketing consulting to just help businesses, you know, grow their business, whatever it was, and all kinds of random clients. But I found myself in this spot where I was specializing in selling education products, like online courses. So I would have a client that's like a guitar instructor, and he's got courses about, you know, how to learn to play the guitar and different styles of guitar and whatever. So I help him. Had someone that's like a dog trainer, teach you how to, like, you know, train your dog to behave well and listen to commands and whatever. So I do marketing to help him. Then, you know, photography instructor, teach you how to take really great photos and whatever, helped him. And all kinds of, you know, dozens of other kind of education niches like that. Then I got partnered on, like, one of my clients that had a business teaching kids about entrepreneurship, which was cool. And I enjoyed that because that felt really aligned for me. He owned this domain, roping.com. And roping is a rodeo sport. It's the one where they lasso the cow, the bull cow, whatever it is. And but even see that comment, I spent 5 or 6 years on that business, and that business made millions of dollars in revenue where I was the one writing the ads. And here I'm being like, you know, cow, bull, whatever it is. Like, that was my disconnect. It's like, I'm writing ads, I'm writing website copy to sell all of these cowboys in Texas training videos to teach them how to ride their horse better and throw their lasso better. And I didn't know if it was a cow or a bull or what's the difference, you know? I'll give you another example. I remember I wrote this 6,000 word, 35-minute script for a video called Slow Motion Roping. And it was this whole unique mechanism about, you know, this certain method of doing it where you can slow everything down so you can be more precise. Because it all happens in like 5 to 10 seconds. Let's say the cow gets released, the cow with horns, whether that's the bull or not, I still don't know. But the cow with horns gets released into the arena. And then from the moment it gets released, within 5 to 10 seconds, it's over. One person's throwing the rope around the horns, the other one's throwing the rope around the legs. And it all happens very quickly. So I was talking with one of our instructors at the business, and I was like, he sent me this email where he was like, yeah, I've got this method where I can kind of like see everything in slow motion. And then my marketing brain was just like, slow motion roping. That's the unique mechanism. It's all about this unique method of what he does to slow it all down so he can get in the right position and whatever. And I write this 35-minute script for this training video called Slow Motion Roping, which was a DVD because funnily enough, in Texas, these cowboys buy DVDs more than online courses. So it was like $40 DVD or whatever called Slow Motion Roping. I wrote the whole script, which sold hundreds of thousands of dollars of copies to these Texas cowboys without even watching the DVD. And that's what my problem was, is I thought that was amazing. Like, I haven't even seen the product. And because like I just use my marketing influence and my ability to story tell and whatever to create this story to sell people this thing. And I hadn't even watched the product. And I'm like, yeah, in this DVD, you're going to learn this, this, and that. And then, you know, I don't feel like I necessarily made any promises that we didn't fulfill on, but there wasn't the full integrity of like, I know what this product is. I understand the value of this, and I'm here transmitting the value to others. It was more like, how can I sell as many DVDs as possible, you know? And then and then I got into this other thing, eventingtraining.com, which was another horse sport, but not, you know, cowboys and Texas. It was more like wealthy people in England or whatever, you know? And then I got into Freedom Farmers, which is education on small scale farming and things like that. And just at a certain point, I was just like, as I was starting to get into spirituality and energy and, you know, living my life purpose and healing and all these things, and like my life was starting to change, I was like, I want to bring all of my energy that I'm putting into selling things to actually sell things that I believe in. Like, I am not a roper. I am not an eventing person. I'm not a farmer. So it didn't make sense. I was a marketer. I still see myself as a marketer. But now I see myself as a healer and a teacher of spiritual wisdom and things like that. So now I can merge that with the marketing and actually feel a greater sense of alignment inside, rather than this kind of like lack of purpose. And like, because I kind of wanted to make money, but it was like, I don't care if someone buys this course to teach them how to throw their lasso correctly. Like, I just don't. Someone else might, if they're really into it. You know, if I had a golf client and was teaching people how to do their golf swing, I might care a bit more about that, but not as much about all this other stuff that I really care about. You know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. And that's such cool context that you didn't even know. Was it a bull or a cow? But it does show, like, there's a lot of business owners that aren't great marketers, but they're great technicians. Mm-hmm. And having someone in your team or your wheelhouse or your friendship group that can articulate your product or service in a way that you can't think about because you're too busy reading the label from inside the bottle is like, you know, it's hard yakka. It's really, really tough. And I think it's quite nice that if they've been able to listen to you just talk, that sometimes if you remove the ego from your own product and you can seek a little bit of assistance even, that can allow you to hopefully, you know, build upon something that you're passionate about. Because like maybe these people that were selling the roping courses, they were passionate about that. They didn't know how to articulate it in a way that would convert it into sales.
Totally.
So what you were doing was very necessary. May not have been aligned with you, but you've created great impact for them.
Yeah, and to speak on that a little bit, like I went to Texas a couple times, and funny story is like I went to Texas twice for about a week each time, and one of the times I stayed a couple nights at a 7-time world champion's house, and a 7-time world champion Hall of Famer, who was one of our instructors, was teaching me how to rope. And then I got on a flight from, one state to another. And then I stayed for a couple of nights at this other 7-time world champion's house. And then he taught me how to play. And, if someone's into tennis, for example, I was hanging out with like the Djokovic and Nadal equivalents, or like if someone's into golf, like the Tiger Woods equivalents. And for someone else, it would be their dream to meet them. And I'm there just staying on their, like in their bedroom, like in a spare bedroom, staying with them, chilling on the couch at night, just having a chat with them, because they were like, they worked with me in this business as, teachers. So for some people, it would be their dream to meet them. And I'm just like chilling at their home, hanging out with them and learning how to rope from them. And what I noticed when I did that, and they would run clinics where people would come and they teach them and stuff, is I met some of the customers of roping.com, and I realized that what we were doing was having a positive impact on them. Like they felt like they were part of a community of all these people learning how to rope, and we had like a community aspect where they could all connect with each other. They could submit videos of them roping, and then the coaches or instructors would give them feedback, and everyone else would be like, that was awesome, you did so good, whatever. We created a sense of community and education, which was helpful for them. And that's a baseline in business. Like you need your product to actually have a positive impact on who it's serving. That's just, if you don't do that, then why would anyone buy your product, right? So that was happening, but I was not in my world. I was in a alternative reality in Texas, learning how to, get on a horse and ride a horse and throw a rope. Like that was not my life. And that's where I just realized like there was a disconnect. It's like my life was doing like a spiritual ceremony with my girlfriend in Costa Rica and all these cool spiritual people where I'm having an awesome time. And then the next day I'd go to a co-working space and be writing ads for some roping thing. And it just didn't make any sense. So anyway, weird kind of way the universe has thrown me on my journey. And I feel good now that I'm feeling more aligned with it all.
So that takes me to like where you're at now. And I was reading what we spoke about earlier in terms of energy. And I know that there's a lot of people that can't seem to connect, including myself sometimes, the link between actuality and generating what they want versus the energy that they're in. And based off what I've spoken to you about, you created a quiz after doing a couple of thousand memos.
I've been on a big journey of understanding all this stuff, and now I've created a cool quiz that kind of captures a lot of the essence of it all.
Right. First and foremostly, what is it about energy that is so important to achieve the results that we want? Because let's say someone's hypothetically going, I want to make money. Holy fuck, Ricky just did that for the last 10 years and he wasn't in full alignment. So maybe I can just do it anyways. But what is it about this that's so important around navigating through where people are at right now?
So I'll just start with a little metaphor to create a bit of context of stuff around stuff. So I'll start by saying that where my curiosity is that I'm curious about understanding the universe, understanding how everything works, but not just like understanding gravity or whatever. I'm interested in understanding like, how does someone have a fulfilling life? How does someone become financially successful? How does someone become fit? How does someone have an amazing relationship? Like I'm interested in that. And I believe as a curious soul that there are patterns. It's like, and I won't go on a whole tangent about it, but I remember there was a point where I wanted to find a partner, or I wanted to, if I be a bit more honest, I wanted to fuck some women. I wanted to learn, how do I attract a woman? And I don't know if many of the listeners have entered this portal, but there's this whole world around learning pickup, right?
Totally.
Pickup artists, all that. I got into that a little bit, and I realized all these little patterns, these different experts in getting laid would be like, you need, like, here's all the things you need to do. Like, you need to lead, for example. So if you're at a bar and you want to, you know, get a woman to be more in your kind of one-on-one energy and less in the kind of crowd, you need to like be like, hey, come here a minute, and like grab her hand and walk. Whereas most guys would be like, I don't have the balls to just say, come here a minute and grab her hand. Like, what if she rejects me? What if, you know, whatever. But there's like, if you're like, hey, do you want to spend some time with me over there? It's not the same energy as, hey, come here a minute, and grabbing her hand and leading and just walking off. It's not like sitting there and being like, hey, do you want to go over there and talk with me? That's like not a confident thing that women would find attractive, right? My point is that there's these patterns similar in business, right? Something like sales. He's like, so yeah, on this call today, I hope you kind of understand a little bit more about what I do. And, you know, if you're interested, then, yeah, I've got some services that I could help you with. It's like, there's no influence there. But if it's like, hey, listen, I've really enjoyed talking today, and I really believe I can help you in a massive way. So I've got this offer. It's called blah, blah, blah. We can get started next week. It's X amount of dollars. And believe me, I really feel that this is going to be a game changer for you. Sound good? Then it's like, whoa, this person can help me. Like, there's influence that happens because it's different energy. With all that said, you know, my understanding is that there's 7 kind of core types of energy. There's safety energy, just like comfort. Like, I just feel comfortable around this person. I feel like they're not going to judge me. I feel like I don't have to be so insecure about how I'm feeling. I just feel comfortable. Then there's passion, excitement, joy. You know, there's a bit more of this boom, like, here we go. And then there's like power, which I would say a lot of marketing and influence is on this power frequency. It's like, listen, I believe I can help you in a massive way. Trust me. It's kind of like a influence, like power, or even just being successful in business and like having a lot of money. It's like feeling on top of the world, like I can make shit happen in my life or whatever, or drive, ambition. It's all similar frequencies, but I would say power is the word I use. And then there's love, which is not about achieving anything. It's not about, you know, being so passionate all the time necessarily. It's not about being so comfortable. It's just like, my heart is open and I'm here to connect with my friends, my family, my partner. I just want to have a good time connecting. We don't need to achieve anything right now. You know, we can just be here and look into each other's eyes and just be like, I love you. Like, you know, it's so nice to be here with you kind of energy. And then there's the throat, you know, and the energies, these frequencies are in different parts of the body, which just, if I lost you there, let's just go back to, there's then the 5th energy is like, it's authentic expression. It's being free, liberated. Like, I can just be myself. And like, you know, in your first podcast, it's like, who gives a fuck? You know, just letting it rip, you know? Whereas think about it, being comfortable, everything's always the same. You know, there's no unpredictable energy. That's very different to who gives a fuck? You know, just letting it rip, right? So that's expression. Then, you know, here is where the next frequency is located, which is, it's all about intuition and you just like kind of have a sense of knowing, like or like getting like a premonition or having a clairvoyant vision of like, you know, or even having strategy in your business. It's like, I can see the future. I can kind of see like what's going to happen and all the different moving parts. That's the intuition. And then there's the crown, or like the highest frequency, which is like, I'm just connected to everything and I feel one with the universe. And with all that said, what I would explain for, you know, the listeners, if they're hearing right now and they're like, what the fuck's this guy talking about? Valid. There was a point in time where people were saying exactly what I'm saying. I'm like, this guy's a fucking nut job, right? So I get it. And what I'll say is that it's like a radio station that has different frequencies, right? For the different radio stations. And just, sometimes you might change we don't do this on the cars anymore with the knob, but you get the idea if you think back to when that was the thing, right? But if you change the frequency to a different radio station, and they'll have different radio show hosts and stuff, and they got different vibes, right? A frequency is a vibe. It's a vibration. It's just a different energy. It's a different flavor. It's a different feeling. Some radio station hosts are really joyful on the sacral, or like the second frequency, which is all about, joy and passion and laughter and fun and all that kind of stuff. So some radio station hosts have that kind of vibe, right? Or some podcasts, it's just a fun vibe, a fun listen. And then there are some that are like all about business and success. It's just a different frequency. They're not about having fun always. They're just like, let's make some fucking money. You know what I mean? It's a different energy. But then there's love and there's all the other ones. And I think that where our general culture sits is that there's less, it's less, like the higher frequencies are less familiar, let's just say. So they're just less familiar. So it's like in some cultures where they're more spiritual, they think it's crazy that all the Westerners are trying to be all successful and achieve everything. They're like, I don't understand this frequency. Why can't they just be present right now and have a good time with their family? Why are they always trying to work so hard to make money? They don't get it, right? So in Australia or, America or whatever, we're so focused on the third frequency, which is success and achievement, that some of these other frequencies, it's like our knob doesn't access it. It's like we get some fuzzy reception or whatever when we're trying to access, the heart and love and gratitude and expressing love and spirituality and one with the universe. It's like, what's this whack job talking about? Whereas in India, for example, where they're all meditating and doing yoga and all that, they're feeling all one with the universe in certain locations. And then they don't understand this whole success paradigm. Why is everyone trying to be successful? You hear what I'm saying?
Totally hear what you're saying. Definitely resonates with me, man. And even like got me curious about like when I'm doing this podcast, just to be like selfish for a second. It's like, what frequency, what energy am I on? When I'm talking, it's just something that I'm like, interesting. I wonder how that comes across with each one of my guests.
Can I make a read on you?
Totally.
Just, like we've only known each other a little bit. So for the listener, it's not like we've been hanging out a heap, but there's like a couple things I'm realizing here. So we're speaking. So there's an element of expression, right? To it. That's like the baseline. But something that I notice here is that I'm the one that seems to be speaking the most, and you're there asking questions, and I appreciate your curiosity. And I would say curiosity is a frequency, which is more like the sixth frequency. It's kind of in alignment with strategy and vision and clairvoyance. That might not make sense, but just kind of like how success and money are on a similar frequency. Curiosity and vision are on a similar frequency. And something that I sense in my magical universe abilities is that you are a very curious person, but I get a sense that in these podcasts that you would get a lot more joy from it being more of a conversation than an interview. Does that resonate?
Yeah, totally. I think, and this is a challenge for the potty, is obviously my job is to be able to host someone, to make them feel comfortable and to share what they know about themselves. But that's why I always ask a question in my pre-interview, which is, it works both ways, so you can feel. And I think that as this podcast goes on, if I bring back certain guests, it becomes more of a conversation, because not everyone is super comfortable sitting in front of a microphone. So it's always easier for people to talk about themselves than it is to be able to like converse in conversation, I feel, because it's going back on what they already know. They don't have to create anything. But I do find that conversation is more fun. I've had a few conversations with friends on this podcast, and they're some of my favorite conversations because we can nerd out about the same shit.
Yeah.
So I think that's a challenge. And then it's also like how I piece that together with what Squeezing the Plums is about. And does that change potentially in the future? So like I said, this morning, I was literally sitting on my balcony and going, righto, I've had some amazing podcasts now. I've got a bit of a personal brand that I'm wanting to work on. Where do I sit with two things? Exactly what we're speaking about. What I want to lead from, and also the logistics of potential financial reward sometime in the future. Not caring when necessarily, but knowing that it's got to have some direction and how I lead that. And it's such an interesting thing to do. So that is pretty much on the money.
Yeah. And, you know, to speak to that, like one of my fascinations around energy and frequency is that to make it practical for the people that are like, but how does that help me make money? Or how does that help me be successful in my business or have a great relationship with my partner or whatever it is? Different tasks require a certain energy. If you want to pick up a woman, you need to lead, you need to be confident, right? If you want to close a sale, you need to be confident. But if you want to have a deep, wholesome, trusting, loving connection in an intimate relationship, if you're too much in that, I'm the fucking confident man, let me take you to the bedroom and fuck the shit out of you or whatever, that's not necessarily going to create that heartfelt, safe, beautiful connection, right? Similar in business. If you bring that confident energy to product creation, it's the wrong energy. You want to bring more of like a artistic, fluid, creative energy to product creation. So I've got this concept like the 7 chakras of a business, or the 7 frequencies of a business, 7 energies of business. And the different areas of business, which are operations, product, marketing, team, branding, vision, and mission, they require different frequencies. And the thing with operations, for example, just the steady day-to-day operations, all the software and systems and everything like that, if you're in this like high energy kind of vibe when you're doing that, you'll miss the details because you need to slow down and you need to like see the details of all the different connecting parts in your, you know, your email CRM and your, you know, your website. All the buttons need to go to the right places and whatever. And if you ever go to a website and you try to buy something and then you go to like a dead page or something like that, or you buy something and you don't get the email receipt, that's a business that's lacking this operational excellence, this like slower. And to be honest, and the listeners might realize, you might realize, that's the energy I struggle with the most, because I like to be high energy. I like to be passionate. I like to be confident, have my heart open, be, you know, expressive, have my vision there and be connected spiritually. That sometimes I'm like, I forget to slow down and take a breath and be like, okay, there's no rush. It's all good, you know? But with that said, the point that I was making is that we need to bring the right energy, the right frequency to different things in our life for our own fulfillment, but also for success, right? And everyone's energy is different, right? So for some people with a podcast, they're so great at being curious and like facilitating this epic conversation. Some people, their superpower is bringing the energy, and then they're the ones that are like bringing the energy and they're riffing off someone, right? Some people are really great, you know, face to camera. Some people are great, you know, one-on-one. Some people are great in a group, right? Some people are quiet, but then in a group, every now and then they say something and it's awesome, right? So we need to find our own authentic flavors with these different things, whether it's a podcast or a business. And then even a business, we need to know, what's my strength? Where do I need to work on? And if I am going to build a team, who would make sense to make the first hire? For someone like me, the first hire makes sense to be like a really grounded, slow, detailed oriented person that can help ground my big energy. You know what I mean? But I do believe that we have all the energies and frequencies inside of us. we're just less familiar with some. So a lot of people go down what I perceive is a path that isn't the best path that they could go down when they start to create some story of like, oh, I really struggle to be slow and detail oriented, so I need to find that externally. That might support, but if we don't cultivate it within, it'll always be like a vulnerability. And I believe in being familiar with all the frequencies, being able to access them when needed, and ultimately what I strive to be in and what I'm all about is what I call the rainbow frequency, which is having access to all the energies at once, where you can feel comfortable, creative, powerful, loving, expressive, intuitive, and spiritually connected all at once. And the way I see that is it's like the flow state to the power of 7. It's like 7 people being in a flow state simultaneously, or it's like the limitless pill, if you've seen the Limitless movie. So that's a little riff on what I'm all about. And the main takeaway, though, that I'd love the listeners to receive is like, are you bringing the right energy to certain areas of your life? And if not, that's okay. I make this mistake all the time, right? Everyone does. But with that, I'd love to ask you.
I was about to say, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Because you this is the whole thing. You can fire away because I like conversations because it puts me on the spot.
Yeah.
So bring it on. Let's do it.
Okay. I've got a question for you, Steve. So what area of your life right now feels like an area of your life where it's just not fully clicking in the way you'd like? Like something's just feeling off. And that's just for the listener. If something feels off, it's because the energy's not resonating. Resonating. That's the word about energy. Music, it's a vibration. It resonates or it doesn't, right? So what's an area of your life where it's just, it might just be a little off, or it might be big off, but just where in your life is just not fully clicking. It's not fully there right now.
I'd say business and the creative side. So, and the reason being is that, so for instance, this podcast, right? When it started, and I yelled, "Who gives a fuck?" And I was like shouting out, and I'm like, "Fuck it, I'm going to talk about whatever I want," right? It was initially going to be with me and a friend, and we were going to have a conversation together about topics that we potentially would get judged on, and we wouldn't care what anyone would think, as a way to be like, I'm going to work through something. And then over time, that sort of changed its mold, and it's moved and morphed into something more like this. But I do find that there's a big urge for me to be able to take my work, people, it's interesting, my friends who know me as a pretty large character, social character, when they hear me talk like this, they go, fuck, this is kind of you, but it's not. When you're with the boys, you're a very different personality, right? So how I can incorporate more of myself into this whilst also trying to make sure I'm giving value back. And I think that's been an interesting dynamic. The flip side to that as well is going, right, knowing that I'm moving towards something without having an end game in mind. And typically in my journey to date, anything that I've put my mind to, there's been a little end sort of focus or goal. And I've sort of tried to remove that so I don't have an attachment to a specific outcome so that I can enjoy the process. So that's where I'm stuck. And I'm like, okay, my goal was 52 episodes in 52 weeks, no matter what. At the end of that 52 weeks, I would stand back, I'd reassess, and I'd go, right, now that I've been consistent and I've learnt along the way, where do I want to take this moving forward?
Cool. All right, let's work with that. Okay. So you said a few things there, but we're going to hyper focus on something so we can really unpack it. But for a bit of context to the listener, to kind of bring them into this world of frequencies and everything, there are 7 core frequencies, but if you imagine them as 7 circles, kind of like making up a circle, so it's like circle, 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 and they're kind of in a circle. If you draw a line between each of them, every single circle, you kind of get like a star looking thing. Yeah. And the way energy flows inside of us, which then becomes our experience, because emotion, for example, is energy in motion. So when we feel something, it's because there's some energy moving inside of us. Right now I'm speaking. There's energy moving through me when I'm speaking, right? When I'm walking, there's energy moving in my body because I'm walking, right? And energy mainly moves because we breathe, we make sounds, or we move. But if you just can imagine this star-looking thing with these circles with all these lines connecting, each of those lines represent some form of energy moving or trying to move. But sometimes, like in the Steve star or in the Ricky star or in the listener star, some of those connections aren't as formed yet. Kind of like in our brain, how we have connections that get made in our brain. Sometimes a line in our energy isn't flowing perfectly. You can think of it even like water streaming, like a stream of water coming down a mountain. Some lines are really well established and it's like the water's flowing here. And then there are some lines where it's like, maybe if there's a heavier flow of water, it'll also go down here. But if not, the curves of the ground aren't as like formed there. Similar in our consciousness, in our energy field. I won't get too deep into that, but to bring it back to you, what I like to do when I'm, coaching someone or supporting someone with their life and just trying to establish like where's the energy not flowing? Where's the frequencies a little off? This can apply in business, relationships, your purpose, your podcast, anything, right? What I try to do is I try to establish, and I'm very familiar with this and you don't necessarily need to be right now, but what I want to establish is which connection in your consciousness is not flowing perfectly right now. So there's a few things you mentioned there. You said business, you said podcast, you said when I'm with the boys, I'm, more this kind of character. And then when I'm on the podcast, they're like, it's kind of you, but not really. But then there's the business and there's goals that you have and whatever. I want to really get it clear because we can talk about the business, we can talk about podcasts, and there might be some link there, but they're not the same thing, right? Like they're related, but they're just like your health and your fitness isn't the same thing. They're slightly different. So what specifically can we hone in on right now? And your vulnerability is so welcome. And I'm sure I'll get a lot out of, you being with it and the listeners will too. What are we going to hone in on right now? One theme, and then we'll dive deeper.
So the things that are coming up for me so that I can talk and answer at the same time is the business, I think, is the one thing that would allow me to do a podcast with more joy. I think the podcast is an extension of business. It's not, the podcast will be necessarily I need to be the world's biggest podcaster. I think it's an extension of having a business that I can do and focus on, which enables me to live a certain lifestyle that I would like. Now, that business, at the moment I've got my podiatry practice and I've always been a little startup entrepreneur person. Like I've had a med tech startup. I used to run nightclubs and bars, had a business called Sessions Entertainment. And now I'm in this interesting roadblock where it's like, well, I've got my podcast and made my commitment for that. But do I go down the social media route and really try to boost my social media personally and see what comes off that? Or do I lean into my podiatry a little bit more and open up something big on that front? And my gut's been telling me to go into the social media side because I can be more expressive. And then not knowing though how that can lead to business opportunities is what I'm struggling to do. So I think that was a really long-winded sort of curvy way of answering business.
Yeah, cool. So business. Okay. So we'll first establish that business as a frequency is kind of like in the gut, and you even mentioned gut.
Can you hear my gut rumbling, by the way?
Yeah. So I didn't give the full transmission on it, but the different frequencies happen in different parts of our body.
Chakras, yeah?
Yeah, chakras. So the root, like essentially where our sex organs are, that's where our safety is. So it's like, that's where our sense of like comfort and like grounding to the earth is. Then in our sacral, which is a little higher, just like kind of where my hand is here, That's like where our pleasure and our creativity and joy and whatever. And then in our gut is our power, obviously our heart, our throat's our expression. That's why we speak, we sing, etc. And then our third eye here is like all the kind of clairvoyant vision and all that kind of stuff. And then there's just like up here is like, we're not even in our body. We're kind of like out in some quantum kind of space or whatever. With all that said, business as a frequency, in my understanding of how I feel it, because I'm saying a lot of stuff, but this isn't from me reading books and stuff. Like one of my gifts is I can feel what's happening here. Like I can feel and sense things. And, you know, people feel, you know, can relate with this because they can say, oh, I got this feeling that Steve, blah, blah, blah. Or I got this sense that if I did this, I would feel more like this or whatever. Like we all have this ability. I've just put a lot of energy in like cultivating it. So business is primarily a solar plexus chakra energy or a power, success, achievement energy. So to really thrive in business, we need to feel comfortable with that frequency. Think of it as like listening to a different genre of music that maybe you don't like. And it's like the reason you don't like it, or I don't like it, or whoever doesn't like it, is just because we haven't heard it very much. We like the things that we're familiar with. And that goes into the safety thing. So I've been doing business for 12 years and lots of different businesses and whatever. I feel like I like the frequency of business. I like feeling successful. I like achieving things. I like feeling powerful and transmitting that confidence to people and whatever, right? And then there's these other frequencies that I feel less comfortable with, right? Like I feel less comfortable being slow and just like kind of grounded and chilling. For some reason, I resist that. It's like a genre of music that I'm not as familiar with. So to bring it back to you and with what we're talking about, I feel like the baseline of unpacking this is to understand you and your confidence and your power, right? So with that said, let me ask you a question. How confident do you feel in business?
Depends what business.
Okay, so now that's a great answer. Now I'm going to ask you two questions. How confident do you feel in your podiatry business?
9 out of 10.
Okay, and how long have you been doing it?
Oh, over a decade.
Okay, so you got a lot of familiarity with it. It's safe. You've understood it. You're feeling confident because you've got a lot of experience in it. So if that's one business path for you to keep going down, what's the alternative path that you could go down or you could do simultaneously?
So it is around the social media path of being able to create either something that I can help people with in terms of self-improvement and development. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that is, I've had a lot of experience probably more in the social settings and scenes. Mm-hmm. So things like dating, talking to girls, things that I struggled with, I find I've got a partner now, but I find pretty easy. Mm-hmm. And that's something I had to overcome a lot of. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, maybe I could share how to do that better or how to dress, because I worked in as a model for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So like those are the types of things. But then I'm like, what is the capacity to be able to grow something? So I always look at a problem and then I'm like, yeah, but like, can that grow into something that I want to make substantial?
Yeah. So let's just pause there and I'll kind of speak to that a little bit. So if we go back to this like imaginary star thing where there's the 7 different circles that are representing the different frequencies, and there's all the lines which show how connected these different frequencies are to each other. A big thing in business is that because it's primarily a power energy and success and achievement and things like that, often people don't have a strong connection from their gut to their heart, or from their power to their heart, or the feelings of power and love are often disconnected. Naturally, they're meant to be connected. Like our natural state is to have all of our energy aligned and everything, but our culture and everything just kind of influences us to kind of get a bit out of balance, let's say, a little out of touch with our natural state of being. So I would say that, I know I'm bringing a lot of stuff here, but I'll try to keep it, practical. Let's say your podiatry business, I would say it's like the solar plexus, like the power, success, etc., and the safety, familiarity, like the root chakra. So it's like the first and third frequency in your little star. Those 2 circles are probably pretty well connected, 9 out of 10, right? But then if we go into something like, you know, if I was to ask you a question like, how confident would you feel to create a business teaching men to be good at style or to meet women? My guess would be it wouldn't be 9, but it might be 8 or 7 or something like that. Does that sound about right?
Sounds like I would feel confident one-on-one on a group, but I wouldn't know how to do the setup of it all, like the systems.
Yeah.
Right. So then I would be like less confident.
Yeah, cool. And so, but my point is that where you've got a lot of experience and familiarity, you naturally have more confidence there. And then if you were to, like with the podiatry, whereas if you were to go into styling or something that you feel like you've got a lot of experience with, but maybe not as much like professional experience with or business experience with, because you've got some experience with it and your own journey and results, you're probably going to be in that 6, 7, 8 out of 10 kind of thing. Whereas if we start to go to something that you don't have as much experience or results or whatever in, naturally the confidence is going to be lower. But here's the point that I really am like molding here is that often we discover our heart energy, our heart frequency kind of, well, it's different for everyone, but I'll just say for me and what I've found and just generally a lot of people that they discover their heart later in their journey, maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, or kind of mid to late 30s or whatever. Maybe they go on some spiritual journey or whatever, and they realize like, I've got all of this energy in my heart, all of this love, all of this kind of like passions, things I want to do, dreams, etc., you know, purpose, whatever. And if they've been operating on the solar plexus frequency about success, achievement, power, whatever, or even on the root chakra, which is about safety and stability and whatever, if they've been operating on those lower frequencies, there's an imbalance. Whereas when you discover your heart, then there can be this kind of like journey of having to like create a connection between the heart and the gut or the power. So it's like, now how can I do a business that actually is going to make my heart the most open? Like where it's going to give me the most fulfillment and love that I could possibly imagine that I'm creating within myself. And then it's getting mirrored back to me by customers that are really resonating with my products. And like, I'm feeling a sense of purpose and whatever. So with that said, what can be a big jump for people is, well, I've got this 9 out of 10 confidence for this business that I've been doing for 10 years, or there's this other stuff I got experience doing that I could maybe do something there. But then what will happen is the more and more that we raise our frequency and we get in touch with all these different frequencies and open our heart and access the rainbow frequency and all this stuff, what ends up happening is we just end up becoming more and more calibrated to what our heart wants. And sometimes it requires stages. Like for me, it's like, you know, I've gone through my business journey and now I'm doing in business what feels like my life's purpose, which is sharing all this wisdom about frequencies and helping people with this wisdom, right? But like a year ago, there was a part of me that was like, maybe I'll start like a marketing education business. Cause that was like, you know, a step in the direction, but I wasn't fully letting my heart be like, I'm here in my true expression of my heart and all of me. You know, I'm a rainbow. I'm not just the color yellow or whatever, which is this, you know, the power success frequency. So with that said, I now want to bring it back to you again. If you were to be as vulnerable with yourself and me and the listeners as possible, in your heart, forget about how confident you are about it right now. Let's just put that solar plexus, power, confidence, energy to the side for a little bit and we'll bring it back. But in your heart, what would you love your business to be about? What would
Travel.
you love? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We've been here for however long, you know, and now we get to the point where that comes out. That's not personal development. That's not style. I'm sure you'll bring all of that. Like you'll bring your style.
I love personal development and stuff like self-improvement is all I listen to.
Yeah.
Which, as you said earlier in the podcast, comes with entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But if it was to really, you know, look at certain things, it would be around travel, and seeing the world. Now, whether that has to be a business or not, though, that's the question I ask for you. Do you have to align what your heart feels amazing about with what you do business about?
Well, I'll say that from my experience, when I was selling DVDs to cowboys in Texas while simultaneously drinking coconuts on the beach in Costa Rica, I would have rathered if my business was about the things I'm interested in. There's nothing wrong with it. I had an awesome time. Like, I was a nomad for a few years. I had this epic time traveling the world whilst doing this business stuff. And I couldn't have done that without the business at the time, right? So I'm grateful for it. But I can now look back and be like, well, I would have rathered if my business was about spirituality and frequencies and wisdom and whatever, right? And even now I can realize, like, I could so easily make so much money just doing all this marketing stuff that I've got so many reps in, but it wouldn't be as fulfilling. So with that said, what I believe in, there's no right or wrong here, just to be clear. It's more like, what do I choose? Like, if all options were on the table, and it's like, you can have a successful business that allows you to travel and explore and be expressed in your style and personal development, or you can have a business that is about personal development and style, but travel's not part of it at all. It's like, well, I would choose the travel one because I like travel, right? And the way that works, that could be you're traveling to record content in different areas. That could be that you're, I'll give you an example for like my partner, Danny. She loves travel as well, and she loves food. So for her, she might have a business that's about like being a travel food blogger kind of person that reviews all these different, restaurants across the world or whatever, cafes. Whereas someone like me that's more into personal development and stuff like that, for me, if I had a business that included travel, my one would probably be less about all the different cafes and stuff in different, locations, and be more about traveling, getting interviewed on different podcasts, or creating social media content where I'm talking about what I'm learning about, these different cultures and whatever, and making it personal development focused, but travel is like threaded throughout it, right? For you will have your own unique combination of how you do that. But my point is that what happens is there's these different frequencies, like on the radio, there's like radio stations that we haven't listened to for a while, right? Or that maybe we've never listened to. So, there's the 7 frequencies, but then if you create that, kind of get them in a circle and you do all those lines to connect them, there's actually 49 different ways energy flows inside of us. And sometimes some of those ways that the energy flow isn't like online, like it's not there. It's kind of like the thing on the mountain that doesn't have any water coming down it. So the more we kind of get in touch with the frequencies, we realize what's going on, then we can be like, well, here's something that I'd love to do, where all of me would be like, yes. And it's kind of like, imagine hanging out with 6 friends and yourself. So there's 7 people, and 3 or 4 of them want to go to the pub to like watch the soccer, and 3 of them want to chill at home and just like hang out and chat or whatever. It's like a disconnect in the group, but we have a group inside of us of different energies, and sometimes they're not all flowing together. So we'll be doing successful stuff, but not feeling like our heart is in it, or we'll have our heart in something, but there's no success or whatever. And ultimately what I believe is that the more we can just have everything integrated, then we're living what I call the rainbow frequency lifestyle, where everything's just magical.
That's really cool. And thank you for sharing that with me, because it's, it takes a lot to be able to reflect, and sometimes you need the person at the other end to be able to ask the right questions, right?
Yeah, big
and
time.
the rainbow frequency, as you put it, it's a beautiful frequency, because there's I can't see there being anything better than you being aligned with where you're going and what you're doing.
Totally, right?
How do you bring that out? And this is interesting. So then how do you bring that out with what you're doing now moving forward? I'd love to know, just even after our conversation then, and people have gone, oh, fuck. All right, well, maybe I need to look a little bit more within for wherever they might be. How is it that you've been able to deduce what you've done into something that people can take as a quiz? Or what is it now that you're doing as a business so that people can leverage off living in potentially this rainbow frequency?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So now on the podcast, without any visuals or whatever, and I'm trying to get people to understand so much at once, it can be a bit overwhelming. But essentially what I've done is I've philosophized, I've got my own set of philosophies around energy, vibrations, frequencies. And there's this quote, which is often attributed to Nikola Tesla, sometimes to Einstein, which is, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I just agree with that, because I can see in myself, if I bring this like joyful energy to sales, it's like I'm not influencing. Whereas if I bring influence, energy, and power and confidence to sales, people buy, right? Then I can bring joy to the product delivery. You know what I mean? And same in relationships. It's like, there's certain energy I want to bring to the bedroom and there's certain energy I want to bring to the dining table. You know what I mean? So I just believe in this. And with my little framework that I've created, where there's 7 different frequencies, and then there's the way they connect. So it's like the way the heart connects to success, right? Success is a frequency, heart and love is a frequency, but then having that love and success, for example, in your business, like that's a connection. There's like a line between these 2 spots. So with that said, I've created this concept, which is called the 49 ways energy flows, which is these 7 circles in a circle and then lines connecting them, and one in the middle as well with a line connecting them. I won't get into it all now because it's a lot, but essentially I've got this philosophy, this framework, this unique mechanism, if I dare to say. And essentially talking to someone, can ask them a question that I know inside of me which line it's talking about. If I say to you, how joyful do you feel you are in your self-expression? I know that joy is here on the 2nd frequency and self-expression is here on the 5th frequency. And the connection there equals a question like, how joyful do you feel in your self-expression? Out of 10, for example. For me, if I was to answer that question, I might say maybe like an 8. I know I could be more joyful and I know I could be less joyful, but it feels like I'm pretty high in that and to be an 8. Whereas if I was to say something like, how grounded do I feel in my self-expression, which would like, and kind of stable and kind of consistent and slow or whatever, but let's say how grounded do I feel in my self-expression, that would be the connection from the 1st frequency to the 5th, that connection. And for me, it'd be more like maybe like a 3 or a 4, because grounded would be more like, yeah, it'd be like a 3 or it'd be like a 7 in this energy because I'm a little slower. But I usually talk more like this. So it's more like the 2nd frequency combined to the 5th. Bottom line is I created these 49 questions, which there's one question for each of those lines. And essentially what happens if someone completes this quiz, then it gives them a breakdown on their frequency. It gives them an overall score, frequency score. And it's not about comparing and who's got a higher frequency, because everyone's got their own subjective and a perception of their frequency. It's kind of like in golf, which I'm a golfer. Everyone has a handicap. You're playing against your own handicap. It's not about beating everyone else, because everyone's just at a different point on their journey of being a golfer. Everyone's on their own spiritual journey. There's always going to be people that are more evolved than you spiritually, people that are, earlier in their journey, and it's not a dick measuring contest, right? So with that said, I created these 49 questions. It gives you an overall frequency score, and it gives you a score for each of your different frequencies. And then it can show you, like, for me, for example, in my higher 3 frequencies, I'm one of the people that has a higher score up here and a lower score down here, because I'm one of these more kind of like woo-woo spiritual people that likes to express myself and think about all this magical universe stuff. Whereas some people that are all about, having their steak for, dinner and their, chopping wood and carrying water and whatever, they're going to be more solid on their lower frequencies. And they're not better or worse. It's just like we have a rainbow inside of us, and it's like, which colors are we more expressed in, right? So yeah, I've created this quiz, and it gives you an overall score for your frequency. It gives you an energy score for each of the 7 frequencies. And it can let you see, like, where are you thriving and where could you have some evolution, right? And they're also mapped to colors. So the lower frequencies, so it's like a rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And the quiz is cool because you complete it and then it shows you with the different colors, like, your red color is this and your orange is this and whatever. And then with time, I'm going to keep evolving it so that it gives people more and more information when they complete it. Because by someone answering those questions, I just, whether it was a quiz or a conversation, I just understand the patterns of, like, their energy. So it's like if they lack confidence and they don't feel as driven and motivated and whatever, they're probably not going to be as good at sales. It's because it's just a pattern of a frequency. It's like, so anyway, I won't go too much more into it, but if anyone is interested in doing it, it's frequencyquiz.com, and it'll bring you into this whole world of all this stuff. It's the starting point that I send people to. And then what I do beyond that is essentially I do coaching, and with time I'll also be offering online courses which teaches all this stuff. And ultimately it's with the intention of helping people understand their unique expression of these different energies. For me, I like to, in my, here in my fifth frequency, I like to write, speak, and sing, right? Some people like to dance as the way they express themselves, right? Some people like to draw as the way they express themselves. So I'm really here to help people understand their own unique expression of their frequencies. And it's my belief that when we express all of who we are in the world and we feel like we can just be the fucking rainbow that we are, then we feel free and our life is awesome. If we feel contracted and like, oh, I don't feel like I can show this part of me, or I don't really feel safe to explore, my sexuality or art or business or whatever, it's like a rainbow missing some colors. So I'm all about, let's bring the rainbow frequency. Let's all be in our own unique expression of a rainbow, and they're all different, right? So right now I'm doing coaching, which is online or in person, and with time it'll be courses and other things. But I've just been hyper focused on like getting my unique mechanism together and getting my quiz and everything, which is the starting point, and we'll kind of see what it all turns into.
That's awesome. My final question for you is, especially with your experience and now going down this path, is there anything in this podcast that you would have liked to have spoken about that you haven't spoken about, or a question you'd like to ask that you haven't asked, that you think that would be beneficial for either the both of us or the people listening at home?
I feel like the main thing that just is strikingly obvious is that I feel like I've come to this podcast with a lot of enthusiasm to share my perspectives on things, but I feel that I don't want the audience or the listener or you to get the wrong idea that I'm also a human that has all kinds of fucking challenges in my life as well. I think sometimes I bring this like excitable energy, which is authentic, but I also want people to realize that I don't have my shit together all the time. I see it as kind of like, sometimes I'm in the rainbow frequency, sometimes I'm joyful, sometimes I'm feeling successful and powerful, and sometimes I'm fucking angry. I don't want to break something, Sometimes I feel like just like shit, So I think that on this journey of spiritual development or personal development or business or whatever, I just feel like I know that when I kind of started my journey, I kind of felt like I saw certain people that seemed like they had their shit together and they're so successful and happy and whatever, that it kind of put this extra pressure on me to kind of like feel like I got to have my shit together to a certain level. But like one of the vulnerabilities that I personally have being into this kind of line of work and curiosity that I'm into, all the stuff I'm into, is that exploring different frequencies and energies and doing emotional healing and plant medicine and things like that, it's kind of like being a nomad and traveling the world compared to having like a grounded home. Sometimes it can feel like that. And for me, I feel like I have like a big just like flood of overwhelming emotions like relatively frequently, because I'm in this realm of all this stuff that I'm very sensitive to feeling all these things, that then if something doesn't work out, or if I'm I'm in a certain environment, or I have some kind of like thing from my childhood that gets triggered by something that I'm experiencing in my life, like I can be very just like swept off my kind of grounded sense of kind of safety and security inside of myself, and just go through these like multiple hour, sometimes multiple day, just like emotional tsunamis inside. And I kind of say that partially to just like honor that part of myself inside of myself and not put pressure on myself to be so perfect, but also for you and the listener to realize that like, I think the less we put pressure on ourselves to kind of be a certain way, the more we can actually have a nice kind of sense of peace in kind of our heart that's just like kind of holding it all together. And I think it's a reminder that I need to have for myself of like, yes, absolutely enjoy the rainbow frequency when it's here. Just kind of like if a stock is like going up, like take that shit to the moon and make as much money as you can. But don't be delusional and think that it's going to just be blue sky forever. Because, you know, if you look at something like an Apple or an Amazon, it consistently grows. And that's what I feel like we can have with our frequency and our life. Things can consistently get better, but there are days that it crashes 5%. And sometimes my frequency feels like it crashes 90% in a day. And there's this whole big situation. And then it kind of corrects. But I think it's just important to remind myself and to share with you and the listener that like we're human, you know, and everyone has their challenges. If you're a billionaire or if you're single or in a great relationship or close with your family or not close with your family or fit or not, like every single combination of human is going to have their shit to deal with. And that's why I think that things like this and having other men to talk to and support networks good to kind of like help you get through those tough times. So yeah,
that's awesome. I want to say thank you so much for, you know, taking the time out of your day, traveling an hour to get here, sharing your experiences and what you've gone through. If people do want to connect with you, they've listened the whole way through and they're going, fuck yes, all right. I can see a bit of what Steve's gone through in my own personal journey. Maybe I wouldn't mind getting Ricky to touching base with Ricky. How can they do that? Where can they find you?
Cool. Yeah, thank you for asking. I would recommend that people start at frequencyquiz.com because then that'll be something valuable that they can experience up front without even necessarily needing to talk to me. And it's literally like my whole life's work in a free quiz that's just like takes less than 10 minutes to complete. So that's where I would recommend people go, frequencyquiz.com. Other than that, if someone wants to contact me directly, connect@rickyflow.com. Just send me an email. I'm kind of old school like that. I don't use social media a whole lot, but if you do want to follow me on social media as well, it's I am Ricky Flow on Instagram. It's the only real platform that I use, and it's RICKYFLOW. I am Ricky Flow. So that's what's up.
Beautiful, bro. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.